Part 60. I'm Really Immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Rusiahua. Chapter 611. Although he usually doesn't care about it deliberately, he still cares a little about the experience of being hugged by a boy. Bai Hui thought about it. This seemed to be the third time Lu Chang'an hugged him, and every time it was because of his own recklessness. Or the recklessness of others. Does this mean that he still cares about himself a little bit? You can't say that, he just takes it easy. After all, even if Zhao Wuqiang falls into the water, he will risk his own life to save others. Although Lu Chang'an is annoying, his character in matters of right and wrong is immeasurable. This is something that little boys of the same age find difficult to achieve. Bai Hui held his hands in front of his lower abdomen and moved his two index fingers against each other. He couldn't help but recall the scene of being hugged by him just now in his mind. It felt like, he should be able to personally feel the difference between himself and An Nuan. So Bai Hui was a little shy, wondering if he would also think about it. After all, compared to some ordinary women, his experience just now should be considered very shocking. Bai Hui glanced at Lu Chang'an secretly, only to find that he was looking sideways at her. What are you looking at me doing? Bai Hui said nervously. She didn't know what she was nervous about. He probably couldn't guess the random things he was thinking about because he was a fool and because he was talking about Gao Duiai. The reason why he couldn't understand the feelings of Tao Piyuan and Miao Yingying actually also suited him. It's not easy for you to grow up so big, Lu Chang'an said with some emotion. I drink a lot of milk. Maybe it's hereditary, Bai Hui said hesitantly, his cheeks were red with embarrassment. He actually discussed this issue with himself directly. It seemed that Lu Chang'an and An Nuan, whom he had always suspected, were together. At that time, in fact, he was still a little reluctant in some male instinctive pursuits. Look, isn't this exposed? He even sighed, Bai Hui thought shyly. I can understand genetics, what does drinking too much milk mean? Lu Chang'an expressed doubts. Develop well. You mean, you are well developed, so you tend to lose your balance when walking, often stumble, fall over when nothing happens, or make people lose their focus and bump into you involuntarily. What did you say? Bai Hui was a little confused, but it made sense. It was common for boys to be embarrassed when they bumped into something because they were too focused on looking at her. I mean, it's not easy for you to be so old, at your age, healthy and safe, and not living without a lot of money. Lu Chang'an smiled. What are you thinking about? That's what it means. But is this my fault? Who made what he said so easy for people to create ambiguity? Nowadays, we are in an age where people can drive just about anything, from Arabic numerals to English letters, from astronomy and geography to political history, from science to superstition. There is nothing that can stop those people think about messy things. Bai Hui's cheeks were slightly warm. After all, she wanted to show off her figure in front of him, but he actually didn't care about it at all. It's really speechless. When a girl like him walks with him, he should always feel the difference between her and An Nuan. I didn't think about anything. You think I'm an idiot, but I think you are an idiot. Bai Hui snorted, lifted up her skirt, pinched the end of the belt and swung it to hit Lu Chang'an. What are you doing? A typical victim guilt theory. I was clearly walking on the sidewalk properly just now, but they were the ones riding their bikes randomly. Bai Hui believed that if the other party hadn't ridden their bikes randomly, Lu Chang'an wouldn't have gotten so angry and taught those people a lesson. Thinking that he was actually willing to be so angry for herself instead of just beating them up, Bai Hui felt a little sweet in her heart. She wonders if it were another girl, not to mention An Nuan or something like that. It's Miao Yingying. Would he go to such trouble and be so annoyed? I didn't mention it just now. Did you jump into the Xiangjiang River after eating barbecue last time? Most lives are so fragile, and dangers are everywhere in the world. Girls like Bai Hui are not like Maya Maya. With the bread man protecting her at all times, she is able to live safely and without any loss. This is probably the miracle of life. Am I going to jump into the Xiangjiang River? I accidentally lost my footing and almost rolled into the Xiangjiang River. Bai Hui stretched her neck. He said that she seemed to be having trouble thinking about something. It seems that you think rolling into the Xiangjiang River is smarter than jumping into the Xiangjiang River yourself. Then, that's not it, that's what Bai Hui thought. It looked stupid to jump into the Xiang River, but to roll into the Xiang River, it seemed that he really wasn't smart. In short, he was just careless. What if you fell into the lake while rowing at Gao Dui's house? Lu Chang'an thought of that time. Bai Fennel fell into the water and became wet all over. It really looked like a fattened crucian carp that turned belly up due to lack of oxygen in the summer. Like, the crucian carp's back is blue, just like her hair is wet and sticking to her back. Bai Hui pouted. Why did he only remember these embarrassing things about himself? Couldn't he tell me how lovely she looked dancing? It is clearly between the lake and the mountains. The boat and its reflection are as beautiful as a painting. The girl's gentle and cute dance is what should be paid most attention to. I fell into the lake, it was just an accident. It is normal for people to fall without standing firm, but the location is different. Bai Hui scratched his hair. No, he must be strong. Lu Chang'an, what this man is best at is making people doubt themselves and then firmly believe that they are a fool. Oh, every time you are not careful, I see you and save you once. So you rely on good luck to grow up healthily and lively. Lu Chang'an pointed ahead. Look at the road, heading towards. Why am I staring? It's not you, my life is in danger every time I'm with you. Normally I don't fall or get hit often. Bai Hui didn't look at the road and continued to glare at Lu Chang'an. Then it seems I have to keep a distance from you, otherwise your life will always be in danger, Lu Chang'an said with a smile. No. Bai Hui quickly stretched out his hand to grab Lu Chang'an's sleeve, and met his smile with a somewhat flustered look. Only then did he realize that he was just joking, and quickly explained, I mean, I am with you. When we are together, it's easy to get distracted, but the reason why you get distracted is that you like to talk nonsense and make others nervous and distracted. I understand, for the sake of your life and safety, I'm going to be serious. Lu Chang'an nodded seriously. Let's talk about the difference in style between the early Soviet literary and artistic works and the middle and later periods. Hated, you might as well tell me how to prove Fermat's last theorem. No, your intelligence can't understand it. You. Bai Hui glared at Lu Chang'an like an anxious rabbit. Look at the road, he always stares at me, his contact lenses are about to fall out. Ah, no. Lu Chang'an and Bai Hui chatted all the way, bought all the midnight snacks and took them back. Bai Hui turned to look at Lu Chang'an. Maybe he didn't care about others at all, so even though Bai Hui was cute and beautiful in a beautiful little dress in front of him every day, one day someone would ask him who the girl who always appeared next to him was. When she wasn't his girlfriend, he still didn't know that people were talking about Bai Fen. But, the night was really beautiful tonight. The city lights were as blurry as the shadows in Bai Hui's pupils. Bai Hui shouted to Lu Chang'an, hey. She was actually fine, she just wanted him to look back at her. Fine. Lu Chang'an smiled, and Bai Hui also smiled. Hey, those who like Baifen, please hand over your monthly tickets to me. I'm really immortal. Author, Chu Lian Kui Kan Ru Xia Hua. Chapter 612. When I returned to the hotel room, I heard Miao Yingying shouting ecstatically, I won. Lu Chang'an and Bai Hui were wondering together. It looked like a solo, who could lose to Miao Yingying? Could it be that she wins even if she loses? In contrast, Tao Peiwen looked depressed. It was unbelievable that Tao Peiwen lost to Miao Yingying. The fight between women was really amazing. I'm just offline, Tao Peiwen simply couldn't understand Miao Yingying's ecstasy. Does this count as a win? It turns out that the two of them were solo, and the conditions for victory were to knock down a tower, get first blood, or make up 100 soldiers. Miao Yingying hid behind the tower at first and felt that she was very safe. At this time, Tao Peiwen disconnected and kept reconnecting. Miao Yingying, while nervously paying attention to Tao Peiwen's connection status, pushed the troop line under Lin Xinhu as command, and then pushed down Tao Peiwen's tower. She declared herself victorious. So that's it, but I still think the struggle between women is so amazing. Miao Yingying actually had the courage to challenge Tao Peiwen to a duel, but Tao Peiwen actually lost. The reason why you dropped offline is your own. Anyway, I won, Miao Yingying said proudly. I'm here to fight you, Gao Duai geared up. I'm not coming. Miao Yingying had no interest in losing to Gao Duai or letting Gao Duai beat her with all his might. The key is that it was so embarrassing to be brutally tortured by Gao Duai in front of Tao Peiwen. As for why Tao Peiwen, who has the same courage and level gap, dares to fight alone, and does not even worry about being tortured and losing face, that is also an unsolved mystery of the inner world of a stupid creature. Let's eat first, Lu Chang'an greeted. Why have you been here for so long? Have you gone on a date? Yu Shui said with a smile. Although she was not familiar with Lu Chang'an, it was not the first time she had met him. I felt that he was a very easy to talk and responsible person. The first time I met Lu Chang'an was when he and Lin Xinhua were in the hotel in Beilong Center. Qian Ning and Lu Yuan were also there. They said some unpleasant things to Bai Hui, and it was Lu Chang'an who stood up for Bai Hui. Yu Shui felt that the two of them matched well. A cute girl like Bai Hui with a cute style should match a boy like this. No way, we took a side road, and the place is far away, Bai Hui quickly differentiated. After all, most of the people here are old classmates. It's okay if Yu Shui doesn't know. If someone makes a joke like this, she looks like she won't tell the difference by default. That's too bitchy. Then you must be the one leading the way, Gao Duai said quickly, and then explained to Tao Peiwen, Chang'an has a strong sense of direction. He can point to the direction and identify the constellations at any time in all 4 seasons. Gao Duai, I have always felt that you are Lu Chang'an's #1 licking dog. Bai Hui hit Gao Duai. Here, your favorite flavored snake is not much left in the store. If you beat me again, I won't give it to you to eat. Gao Duai hurried to eat the flavored snake. Lin Xinhua originally wanted to say that Lu Chang'an's #1 dog liquor must be in Nuan, but he already felt that Tian Nuan's name might be a bit irritating to Bai Fen, so he called Yu Shui over to eat. Zhao Chen was still teaching his boyfriend to play games, while Lei Hong was concentrating on playing against a simple computer. Bai Hui went to the bathroom to check if her contact lenses were loose, and then Tao Peiwen also walked in. Hi, we are all unfamiliar with each other, so we say hello. I heard that many of Gao Duai's friends are very beautiful, and it turns out that they are, so when I see them today. Tao Peiwen was not an exaggerated compliment. Miao Yingying stopped talking. That Zhao Chen and Bai Hui in front of her were indeed considered beautiful girls. Especially Bai Hui, is not as tall as Zhao Chen, but overall his conditions are very superior. Thank you, Bai Hui admitted openly. Girls who are often noticed by others will always slowly gain confidence. I heard Gao Duai himself revealed that he was a fat guy in high school. Tao Peiwen laughed. That doesn't count, he's quite strong and fat. It's not hard to breathe after walking a few steps. During the summer vacation, he often rode with Miao Yingying to exercise and lost weight, Bai Hui reminded casually. When Tao Peiwen and Gao Duai were chubby, Miao Yingying was always with them. In comparison, Gao Duai is now a handsome guy. Tao Peiwen laughed again, seemingly not understanding the meaning of Bai Hui's words. Was Lu Chang'an also a fat guy in high school? He's not. Bai Hui shook her head, feeling suddenly alert. She turned to look at Tao Peiwen, but Tao Peiwen had already wiped her hands and walked out. Bai Hui had to suspect that Tao Peiwen was making fun of herself. Bai Hui reminded Tao Peiwen that she came from the middle, and when Gao Duai was not the type that many girls liked, Miao Yingying was always by his side, and Tao Peiwen was not qualified to compete with Miao Yingying. Tao Peiwen didn't really know whether Lu Chang'an was fat in high school. She was just reminding Bai Hui, didn't Bai Hui come out halfway to steal An Nuan's boyfriend? Why didn't you accompany Lu Chang'an from the beginning? Bai Hui didn't want to compete with An Nuan for her boyfriend at all. Bai Fen's face is red and her ears are red. Sure enough, people flock together and birds of a feather flock together. Miao Yingying and she are good friends, but Tao Peiwen is unhappy. This Tao Peiwen will probably get along very well with An Nuan. Bai Hui's analysis is not unreasonable. Gao Duai's best friends in high school are Lu Chang'an and An Nuan. Gao Duai will tell Tao Peiwen about Lu Chang'an, so An Nuan will not be missed. Tao Peiwen has no reason not to know An Nuan. Tao Peiwen was just sarcastically saying that Bai Hui was not qualified to stand up for Miao Yingying. Hateful. Angrily, Bai Hui held back her strength, touched up her makeup, and looked even more beautiful before walking out of the bathroom. Everyone had put down their computers and started eating together. Looking around, there was only one empty seat next to Lu Chang'an. Many times when everyone is not a heartless person, they will be sensitive to knowing who likes to sit with whom, and how to sit with them. People have taught them since childhood. If you pay attention, you will know that you are not suitable. Where to sit? It seems that everyone thinks that Bai Hui will sit with Lu Chang'an. Bai Hui is slightly shy, holding up her skirt and preparing to walk over and sit down. After all, if she has to sit far away, wouldn't it be too deliberate? At this time, a flexible figure passed by Bai Hui at high speed. Gao Duai held a piece of flavor snake and sat down in the empty seat next to Lu Chang'an. Bai Hui, please sit there. Gao Duai pointed to the position where he had just been. On both sides of him were Miao Yingying and Tao Peiwen. He just gave up the position to Bai Hui. After all, Bai Hui and Miao Yingying hadn't seen each other for a long time. Gao Duai, such thoughtfulness must be very satisfying. Gao Duai showed an honest smile at every little thing, and he didn't need Bai Hui to be grateful to him for it. Today's flavored snake must be made from a venomous snake. The snake venom has not been taken out, so it will be poisonous if eaten, right? Bai Hui sat down expressionlessly, because she was too worried that Gao Duai would not be poisoned, so she picked up another plate of super spicy edamame and handed it to Gao Duai. This is so spicy, I can't stand it. Gao Duai shook his head quickly. I specially gave it to you. If you don't finish it, I'll kill you, Bai Hui threatened. Then, I'll eat it later, Gao Duai said with a little fear. For some reason, Bai Hui seemed to exude an aura that was like a mortal enemy of killing his father, which made Gao Duai shudder and choose to surrender. Gao Duai was puzzled. Some girls were obviously stupid and weak. Why did he feel so withdrawn? The same thing happened when I was sitting there just now. I always felt that Miao Yingying and Tao Peiwen exuded a cold air like martial arts masters. When they turned their heads to look at or talk to each other through Gao Duai felt that there were rays piercing him, and every energy in his body was pierced by rays. Every cell has a fear of division and mutation. I recommend a book called Rebirth as a Police Officer in South Africa. Is it enjoyable to be a police officer in South Africa? Rock's answer is very cool. You can read the exotic police stories. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Siahua. Chapter 613. Chapter 591, Hashtag. A group of people played until late at night. Some people stayed and some left. This is a sentence that can embody life, but it has no real meaning. The philosophy of life is reflected everywhere. When you find something, you will sigh with emotion, sigh and lament various emotions, which is the so-called moaning without illness. Lu Chang'an and Bai Hui left together. Bai Hui went to deal with her cousin all night, and Lu Chang'an wanted to go home. I really hate Tao Pe when Bai Hui rubbed her hands and breathed a sigh of relief. She was wearing a delicate and complicated little skirt, which was neither convenient to take off nor casually lay down on the bed of the esports hotel. She is wearing an elegant style today, rather than a simple cute style. I originally wanted to say something, but after thinking about it, I have nothing to say. Lu Chang'an also rubbed his hands. Bai Hui glanced at his palms. If An Nuan was with him, would he rub his palms to warm them and then cover An Nuan's hand? Definitely, he is so good at teasing An Nuan. Come on, put your hands in. Lu Chang'an continued to rub his hands. Bai Hui looked at Lu Chang'an in disbelief and asked, "What happened? Did God finally discover his daughter left behind in the world?" "Hurry up," Lu Chang'an urged. Bai Hui raised his head nervously, clenching his hands into fists, then loosening them, then clenching them, and then loosening them again. A few white onion-like fingers lightly touched his palms and then put them in. She was a little disappointed, as expected. Lu Chang'an was stunned for a moment. "You are not hot." "Hot?" Bai Hui's voice trembled slightly. Lu Chang'an quickly retracted his hands. He rubbed his hands until they were hot. The temperature was extremely high. In such a cold weather, he could avoid it in a matter of seconds. It made her scream in surprise. Bai Hui also retracted her hand, silently took out a pair of cute bear gloves from her bag and put them on. "Ah!" Bai Hui suddenly opened his mouth slowly and let out a scream without much sincerity. "What's wrong?" Lu Chang'an was confused. "Don't you just want to see others being fooled and then being startled and screaming?" Bai Hui opened her mouth again. "Ah, ah, ah, it's burned. Are you satisfied?" Lu Chang'an rarely felt embarrassed, so he rubbed his hands. "Ah, ah." Bai Hui reluctantly struck back, wanting her to scream in surprise. "Let you hear enough." Lu Chang'an sighed. "Ah, oh, goose." Bai Hui walked beside Lu Chang'an, not looking at the road, but craning her neck and letting out various frightened sighs at him. "Okay, I was wrong, I was wrong." Lu Chang'an raised his hand and pushed her face away. It was unbearable to keep blowing on his face. "Stop screaming." Bai Hui then snorted a little arrogantly, with the corners of her mouth raised slightly, feeling a little proud, and her cheeks were warm. Generally speaking, when two people get along, he is no longer the only one teasing her. It's no longer just him teasing her around and making her gnash her teeth in anger. What does it mean when he starts to be punished by her? If it were before, he would probably grab her hand, take off her gloves with cute bear patterns, mash them into a ball and stuff them into her mouth to stop her from screaming. When someone can talk about physics, this person may not be able to talk about reason. What does it mean when someone can't reason with him and he doesn't know how to use physical means? Maybe she really is the daughter of God. Bai Hui raised her head and looked at the sky, then turned to look at him, showing the most beautiful smile in 19 years. Lu Chang'an sent Bai Hui to the downstairs of Bailong Center. After all, he was a weak, stupid, and easy to attract wolves. When he returned home, Shang Guandandan was still sitting under the electric heating table watching TV. After Zhou Dongdong went home to go to bed, Shang Guandandan occupied the distinguished seat under the electric heating table, and then found that sitting here was warm. It was really comfortable to wrap myself in a quilt and I didn't want to move at all. "What time is it?" Lu Chang'an asked, like a parent asking a child to go to bed, with an air of as if the other person's crime was unforgivable. "Time means nothing to me. I can see whatever time I want to see." As Shang Guandandan spoke, he quietly stretched out his leg and put it in front of Lu Chang'an, trying to trip him up. Unfortunately, Lu Chang'an stood still and asked incomprehensibly, "You already have 2 TVs, why are you still watching TV upstairs?" "Because I don't have an electric radiator," Shang Guandandan said confidently, "I can only burn a small stove, but do you know how many briquettes are needed every day?" "That's called briquettes, not briquettes. I'm going to call them coal briquettes. You can continue reading, I'm going to bed." Lu Chang'an remembered the life philosophy of not arguing with Shang Guandandan because it was meaningless. "Okay, good night, I'll help you turn off the TV and electric heating table in a moment." Shang Guandandan stared at the TV and sighed, "I am such a diligent and frugal person, and I don't need you to praise me for living at home. The spirit has penetrated deep into my bones. When I was in Viang Palace before, I never paid attention to the candles burning all night outside Jiaofang Palace." Lu Chang'an didn't listen to her bragging, so he washed his face, brushed his teeth and went to bed. Shang Guandandan watched Lu Chang'an walk past the living room twice, but he really had no intention of praising her at all. Shang Guandandan angrily stretched out his hand from the quilt, changed the table, and quickly retracted his hand. Still wrapping himself tightly was the most comfortable. When Lu Chang'an woke up the next morning, he found that the TV was not turned off and the electric heating table was not turned off, so he stood there calmly. Hashtag. Let's sing a song first. Angry people start fights. Angry people start fights. He who is patient puts an end to strife. He who is patient puts an end to strife. If you are angry. If you are angry. Look to Jesus. Look to Jesus. After singing this song, Lu Chang'an sang a piece of Don't Be Angry that Domingo, Carreras, and Pavarotti once sung. I feel really at peace. Just as Lu Chang'an was about to go out, Zhou Dongdong also got up and was walking downstairs with the plastic hen in his arms. When he saw Lu Chang'an, he squeezed the hen and let out a sharp, harsh ga sound. Remind Lu Chang'an to turn around and hold her hand. Lu Chang'an held Zhou Dongdong's raised hand and walked downstairs. Zhou Dongdong called out the dog's name. Lu Sin came out of the kennel shaking his head, circled around the two people, and licked them respectively. Licking shoes as a sign of sincerity. What to eat today? Lu Chang'an was thinking about a serious question. When he was poor, he didn't need to think about this problem. A bowl of white rice every day would fill him up and satisfy him. But when he had more choices, he became a little troubled. Thinking about how troubled I am with my own living standard, the life of a little fairy like Zhu Huntang must be even more boring and boring. Eat delicious food, this is a simple question for Zhou Dongdong. Simplifying complex problems contains the philosophy of life of simplicity. Lu Chang'an has a little inspiration. He is worthy of being a child that Lu Chang'an can hold hands with. After thinking about some random things in boredom, Lu Chang'an still didn't think about what to eat today, so he knocked on Shang Guandandan's door. The door didn't open. Lu Chang'an kept knocking on the door until Shang Guandandan opened the door, revealing a pair of sleepy eyes looking at Lu Chang'an blankly through the crack in the door. Your posture is wrong, get up and go back to sleep. Lu Chang'an issued a kind reminder. Bang, Shang Guandandan closed the door heavily. Lu Chang'an then took Zhou Dongdong to the vegetable market to buy vegetables. It was another refreshing day. The vegetable market in the morning is full of life. Sometimes I always feel that if I have been away from the vegetable market for too long, it will seem a bit empty and illusory. Only by coming to this place full of the strongest market atmosphere can I feel that I can re-enter the world. Think of it, the most essential need in life is just 3 meals a day. Mortals with a short lifespan will probably return to their original life only when they are old and can no longer have unnecessary desires. It's just a matter of what kind of life to live at what stage and what kind of desires to satisfy. When you get old, the admonitions of those who have experienced it are meaningless. In addition to 3 meals a day, life also includes various attempts and experiences. So Lu Chang'an bought a live snake from the vegetable market and prepared it for Zhou Dongdong to eat. hello. Zhou Dongdong had already taken Lucine away like a crazy little plane. I recommend a book called Global Manufacturing, which is a very good book. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 614. The snake Lu Chang'an bought was the king's golden snake. The name sounds domineering, as if it is the overlord of snakes like the king cobra, but in fact the king's golden snake has another name, cauliflower snake. The name sounds like a dish, and it is cultivated in large quantities as food. The word cauliflower is also very interesting. When used on plants, it means beautiful scenery, such as rapeseed flowers. When used on animals, it means delicacies, such as cauliflower snake. When used on humans, it means contracting sexually transmitted diseases. Lu Chang'an saw that the stall owner was very busy, so he didn't ask for help in handling the snake. He put the snake in a bag and bought some ginger and garlic. If it wasn't for making soup, these two things were indispensable for making snakes. The crazy little plane stopped after hitting someone. The kind middle-aged man held down Zhou Dongdong's head to prevent her from stumbling and falling. Zhou Dongdong hid behind the signboard of the chicken chop shop with lingering fear and looked around. His eyes couldn't help but glance into the chicken chop shop. Then he quickly shook his eyes and concentrated on the bag in Brother Chang'an's hand. Last time Brother Chang'an ate centipedes by himself. Fortunately, his mother had the antidote. Zhou Dongdong always remembered this. Snakes are poisonous. The last time Zhou Dongdong watched TV, a sister was bitten by a snake. The brother who was with her chased the snake. Unexpectedly, the snake was another beautiful sister. From then on, she and that brother we lived together happily, and every Qingming festival we burn paper money for the sister who was bitten by a snake. Zhou Dongdong didn't want others to burn paper money for him, so he had to stay away from his brother Chang'an. Suddenly, Brother Chang'an ran towards him. Zhou Dongdong was so frightened that he cried loudly. He hurriedly threw his hands and spiraled away like a small plane that had been shot. Lu Xin followed behind and shouted, because the saint girl felt when there was a threat, Protector Lu didn't know where the threat came from, so he had no choice but to bluff and intimidate the unknown enemy. Lu Chang'an followed behind and laughed 3 times, then slowly walked back to the community. Shang Guandandan had already gotten up, sitting on the long bench, holding her thermos and looking at the beeping kettle on the small stove. Brother Chang'an has caught a snake. Zhou Dongdong ran past Shang Guandandan anxiously, then stood on the stairs and watched. If Brother Chang'an continued to approach her later, she could run home quickly. If Brother Chang'an was only downstairs, she could stand here and observe safely. Shang Guandandan breathed out into the cold morning, tilted his head to the left, then to the right, his body swaying, then he puffed up his cheeks and imitated boiling the kettle and made a beep. Beep. Sound. Zhou Dongdong came back first at the flying speed of a small plane, but Lu Chang'an was not far behind. Then he came back, crushed several snakes to death and nailed them to the sycamore tree, and then pulled their smooth and slender bodies. The delicate and complex bone structure of their entire body is destroyed so that they can no longer twist around. At the same time, the sycamore tree has the ability to calm spirits and can absorb the resentful spirits of evil creatures. After all, snakes are very evil. Lu Chang'an first removed the internal organs and threw away the snake's gallbladder, then peeled off the snake's skin and chopped the snake meat into sections. Snake skin can be eaten cold. It is treated in the same way as fish skin. It is first soaked and rolled in hot water, and then soaked and rolled in cold water. The scales will fall off with a swipe. Through observation, Zhou Dongdong came to the conclusion, Brother Chang'an wanted to eat these snakes. Zhou Dongdong hurriedly went home to find the antidote. She didn't eat snakes in the morning. She marinated them first. Breakfast was made by Zhou Shuling. After Lu Chang'an finished eating, he lay down under the sycamore tree. Zhou Dongdong held 2 red antidote pills that had become wet in her hands for a long time. I had to feed it to Lu Chang'an. Shang Guandandan sat beside him and drank effervescent water. While resisting Zhou Dongdong's feeding, Lu Chang'an read the text message. Today, Tao Peiwen was going to visit Hunan University. Gao Dui invited An Nuan to be his guide, and Miao Yingying and Bai Hui also went. What a strange combination. Lu Chang'an thought about it and felt that there was nothing strange about it. They were all old classmates and good friends. Brother Chang'an, have you ever eaten a dragon? Zhou Dongdong climbed onto Lu Chang'an and knelt down, asking while continuing to work hard to get Brother Chang'an to take the antidote. Zhou Dongdong could understand Brother Chang'an's resistance. When her mother gave Zhou Dongdong medicine, she also shook her head and refused to take it. Why did you suddenly think of eating a dragon? Lu Chang'an frowned. Our teacher said that a dragon is a very big snake, Zhou Dongdong explained. A dragon is a dragon. Jiaozu killed the white snake before because the white snake wanted to rob Jiaozu of his dragon energy, Shang Guandandan said disdainfully. As a girl who can be referred to as Phoenix, she consciously maintains the same rank. The majesty of another creature dragon. Feudal elements. Lu Chang'an also dismissed the feudal remnants in Shang Guandandan's thoughts, and gave Zhou Dongdong a popular science education. Look at the 12 zodiac animals, except for the dragon, which no one has seen now, the other 11 are all it exists in reality. Brother Chang'an, have you ever eaten the 12 zodiac signs? Zhou Dongdong said enviously. Is that what I mean? Lu Chang'an continued, dragon actually exists in reality. Of course, I am not talking about the dragons in myths and legends that control the waters of the world, or have the ability to reverse time and space and travel through thousands of realms. They are not that powerful. Who is more powerful, dragon or Sun Wukong? Sun Wukong, the images after processing from myths and legends often transcend the peak of real power. The dragon I am talking about is the peak of natural biological power that exists in reality. Then has Sun Wukong ever eaten a dragon? Can you please stop bringing the topic to eating? Then has Sun Wukong ever eaten a dragon? How do I know? I'm not Sun Wukong. Have you ever eaten a dragon? No. Ouch. I told you not to bark like a dog. Oh, okay. Lu Chang'an took Zhou Dongdong off his body and threw him aside. He was really a stupid child who was difficult to communicate with. Dongdong, where is your antidote? Shang Guandandan chuckled. Every time he saw Zhou Dongdong leaving Lu Chang'an helpless, Shang Guandandan was very happy. Zhou Dongdong looked at his sticky palms and looked around with wide eyes in surprise. Where is my antidote? Eat it yourself, Lu Chang'an said. Oh. Qinyanan sent a message, saying that the camels prepared were a bit large and it would take a long time to marinate. Generally, the camels used for barbecue are small single-humped camels, but this time they used large adult camels with 2 humps. This meant that he had to wait 2 days. Lu Chang'an informed Shang Guandandan and Zhou Dongdong, who were most concerned about the roasted camel, and then saw the message from Sunangziu. Li Hongfang's back wound had been completely healed, but there was a kind of evil monk in her body. The exact same cell tissue was detected in Rasputin's remains. I recommend a very innovative book, Raising All Humans. It is very interesting. You can read it. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 615. Rasputin is a legend that accompanied the collapse of the last Tsar's empire. It seems that it is not just a legend, but a real legend. Just like Lu Chang'an, who always lies under the plane tree and lives like a salted fish who has lost his dream. Being a salted fish in peaceful times is a very comfortable thing. As for the world that is still in turmoil, Lu Chang'an has no interest in saving the world at all. As long as the environment he lives in does not affect his emotions, the world is so big, and Lu Chang'an only guards a piece of land under the plane tree. There is a deck chair, a puddle with loaches, an earthen stove, and some lively and silly creatures. I wonder what Rasputin thinks. It seems that he is not as cold as Lu Chang'an but still faces the world gently. Will Rasputin be more powerful than himself? Lu Chang'an didn't know, but he guessed that the possibility was relatively small. Since the same cell tissue as Rasputin appears in Li Hongfang's body, let's temporarily assume that it was Rasputin's work. Why did he do this? Why did he appear in the Kyushu Wind and Thunder Swordsman's treasure trove? It was a treasure trove, not a real tomb. Let me explain again. Did he discover the treasure place earlier than Li Hongfang, or did he follow Li Hongfang into it? In his attack on Li Hongfang, was he trying to play tricks on a weak creature and watch her tragically mutate, or was he trying to develop servants that were easy to control? All this is unknown. At present, it seems that Rasputin and Lu Chang'an are not the same person. Lu Chang'an can be sure of this, but he will not make too many judgments about Rasputin before having any contact with him. We have really met. Can we talk about it? Tell us the story of how immortal people should live a correct and active life in modern human society under the guidance of the core socialist values. If he is willing to live in the same country as Lu Chang'an also hopes that his experience can serve as an inspiration for him to participate in national construction and lead a stable and harmonious life in the future. Dan, do you want to join our Zhou Fenglai sword sect? Lu Chang'an asked Shang Guandandan, looking sideways. Shang Guandandan was holding the lid of the pot, sticking out his tongue to taste the sweetness in the water bit by bit. What is that? That's not a thing. It's a sect organization, Lu Chang'an explained. It turns out it's not a thing. Shang Guandandan looked at Lu Chang'an, whose expression turned expressionless, and didn't laugh out loud. He just handed over the lid of the pot. Be good, I'll give you some effervescent water. Thank you, no need. Lu Chang'an waved his hand. Okay, I can join, but I want to be the godmother. Shang Guandandan actually knew that Qinyanan and Zhu Huntang came to Lu Chang'an to form a boring organization called Zhou Fenglai Jianmen. Okay, next time Zhou Shuling makes steamed buns, I'll cut some of them and add them in, so you don't have to buy baking powder. Lu Chang'an nodded. Godmother. The god of the sect, the mother of the mother. In a novel I read last time, there was a position in that sect called godmother. Her true identity was actually Dongfangbubi, but she jumped off the Blackwood Cliff and disappeared. Later, she changed her appearance and rejoined the Sun Moon God sect, and started a palace battle with Ren Yingying, Yu Lingshan, Ningzongs, Yilin, Lan Fenghuang, and others. Later, she won the final victory. Guess why, Shangguan? Dandan explained, I don't think Godmother and Queen Mother mean the same thing, but if you insist on thinking so, there's nothing I can do about it. Dan, weren't you so annoying before? Lu Chang'an observed. Shangguan Dan, you are still cuter when you look at me and want to hide in a coffin every day. Because in the past, my impression of you was that of the pervert in Vyang Palace, and then I found out that you have finally grown up, and I am very relieved. Shangguan Dandan waved towards Lu Chang'an happily, wanting to touch his head. Lu Chang'an threw the plastic little hen that Zhou Dongdong put on his shoulder. A strand of Shangguan Dandan's long hair whipped up from behind, tying up the plastic hen. Gah! The little hen was restrained by Shangguan Dandan's long hair and screamed miserably. Shangguan Dandan found it interesting, so he loosened and tightened it to make the little hen scream in different tones. Zhou Dongdong found out, so he took the little hen back and wanted to tie the little hen up with his own hair. Unfortunately, her hair was not that long, so he had to hold the little hen with his hand and scream a few times to express failure. The question I asked you just now, why do you think it is? Shangguan Dandan saw Lu Chang'an staring at her long hair, and proudly made his long hair flow behind her in the windlass style, strands and threads, like a female ghost. Aura. You are unscientific. Lu Chang'an was not interested in speculating on the plot of boring harem novels at all, but Shangguan Dandan's hair was really difficult to understand. I have never seen a creature whose body hair can be driven by consciousness like tentacles. Because Dongfangbubi asked Ling Huchong to practice a new magical skill with her, Dongfangbubi became a man again, and Ling Huchong became a woman. Naturally, there was no more palace fighting. The former opponent in palace fighting became Dongfangbubi. An undefeated woman, Shang Guandandan, continued, "Did you understand anything from this story? Are these hairs of yours the ultimate form of tentacles? They appear to be very fine hairs on the surface, but in fact they can be driven collaboratively through bioelectricity. When necessary, these hair strands will merge into tentacle forms," Lu Chang'an observed with Shang Guandandan's hair. No wonder, no matter whether Shang Guandandan was sitting, lying, or paralyzed in his house, there was never a single hair left. When you looked down at the text message and suddenly asked me if I wanted to join your Zhu Fenglai sword sect, I realized that you might have encountered an unknown enemy. Facing the unknown, even if you don't lose confidence, you will feel that adding alliances is a matter of course. Shang Guandandan gently stroked the thermos pot, his tone full of tenderness. "Emperor, just like when you first met me, we are mother and son of destiny. Destined to have a kinship with God, we are natural allies. I think your current state is not only because of me, but the coffin has also left an impression and transformation on you, and the coffin is really reminiscent of vampires, female ghosts, zombies, and the like. Something. You should not be a human being now, not even an evolved human being, or a mutated human being. You belong to a humanoid intelligent body. As for whether it is a biological category, it is unknown for the time being." Lu Chang'an was still full of emotions towards Shang Guandandan. Interested even more than Rasputin. "If you can give me your electric heating table, I will join your Zhu Fenglai sword sect instead of being the godmother." Shang Guandandan looked at Lu Chang'an expectantly. "No." Hearing the electric radiator, Lu Chang'an came back to his senses. There was nothing in the conversation between the two people just now that could be answered by each other, but Shang Guandandan showed up in the end and talked a lot of nonsense. In the end, he just wanted his electric phone. "Kotetsu. I'm going to play cards." Shang Guan snorted and walked towards the mahjong parlor with the thermos flask in his arms. At this temperature, no one was sitting under the grape trellis to play cards. Zhou Dongdong followed Shang Guandandan, holding Shang Guandandan's little finger and running for a few steps. Then he remembered that brother Chang'an was also on holiday today, so he ran back again, climbed on Lu Chang'an and sat on him. Lu Chang'an touched Zhou Dongdong's head, closed his eyes, and wanted to sleep for a while. I recommend a book called I Am the Cat King. The author writes very well about daily life. It is a story about a cat training humans. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 616. After sleeping for a while, Lu Chang'an woke up and found that he had received many messages. Bai Hui is very beautiful today. She is also wearing a pair of 10-centimeter high heels. She is a little shorter than me. That Tao Piwen is indeed a double, and Miao Yingying is prettier than her. What are you doing? You're not replying to my text messages. I noticed that Bai Hui is checking her phone from time to time. I don't know who she has sent text messages to. Are you waiting for someone to reply? Tao Piwen is actually a very nice person. Actually, Tao Piwen is more attractive than Miao Yingying. These were the messages from An Nuan. Lu Chang'an didn't see how attractive Tao Piwen was, but he saw that Tao Piwen was very smart, and Bai Hui obviously didn't have a good impression of her, so he won An Nuan's favor. Woman. Bai Hui only sent one photo to Lu Chang'an. It was of An Nuan today. An Nuan faced the camera openly, but it was not taken secretly. An Nuan is naturally very beautiful in the photo. Bai Hui also did some processing and added filters to adjust the color, which made Nuan, who is already very photogenic, give off the feeling of a dreamy girl. But, from this angle, why does Nuan look so wealthy? Owning an airport at a young age. Woman. After eating snake at noon, Lu Chang'an rushed to Zheongda University in the afternoon. He did not go to Gao Duai and others, but went directly to Sunangziu's base. Sunangziu always seems to have two outfits. She usually wears a long coat and skirt in class, but in the underground base she wears a white overalls and a pair of glasses, as if she is really just a genius girl who lives a simple life and is obsessed with natural science. Sunangziu and Shang Guandandan are similar in height. They have some similarities, but in Lu Chang'an's eyes, they are more different. In comparison, Shang Guandandan is a girl with a simple life, but she is obsessed with thermos kettles and electric heating tables. Television. Sunangziu is looking at the results of the GST sedimentation experiment, which is an experimental method used in vitro to examine the interaction between proteins. The advantages and disadvantages are equally obvious. What's going on? Lu Chang'an didn't look at the experimental report in Sunangziu's hand. When situations like this happen, experiments often need to be carried out one after another. Experimental data and conclusion analysis cannot be drawn by just a person. With the development of modern storage technology, data from a large-scale comprehensive experiment can fill a room unlike in the past. I believe that Li Hongfang has told you about her knowledge of Rasputin before, and that our laboratory exchanged for the remains of Rasputin preserved in the museum. Sunangziu stretched out, looking a little tired, but his eyes it still has a bright luster. Yeah, one. Lu Chang'an nodded. Have you ever been? No. Sunangziu smiled and said, you see, we still have a good understanding. You already know what I'm thinking before I even finish speaking. Because I feel that you really want to cut off mine. This is not called a tacit understanding, but a crisis warning. Lu Chang'an also smiled. It seems like this is a pretty normal thought. At least you can think of it, so it's not a surprising move. Sunangziu pressed her slender, white onion-like fingers to her temples and rubbed them gently. As if he couldn't remember for a while, he asked the knowledgeable Lu Chang'an, is there any shrewd woman in history who was castrated because her husband was looking for women instead of being a grudge in the family? I don't know. Lu Chang'an cupped his hand. There must be. There must be some, but, if you want to follow the same example, do you have such a sharp knife? Try. That's not necessary. Sunangziu retracted her casual gaze, it was just a joke. Really, who would want to castrate him? At that time, Mrs. Karnstein and I took our own samples as control specimens, and the same marker was not found in Rasputin's cell tissue. We named the RNA fragment ZR75-1. Sunangziu did not continue to joke. That is to say, Rasputin and I have no biological inheritance relationship. Lu Chang'an was happy to accept this result. Based on the reasons for the mutations caused by Sunangziu, Mrs. Karnstein, Shang Guandandan, Qinyanan, and others, or rather judging from the induction process, it would be a bit embarrassing if Rasputin also had the same RNA fragment tag. Yes. But isn't ZR75-1 a breast cancer cell? Lu Chang'an was very confused about Sunangziu's naming method. When we got the results, we happened to be doing a radioactive gel shift experiment, which used this breast cancer cell. What a scientific way of naming. This also means that Rasputin is on another evolutionary path parallel to yours. Based on these years of research, we have simulated his original form and evolutionary path. As Sunangziu said, he walked out of the laboratory and came to a conference room next door. There was a 300-inch laser cinema system. In addition to displaying image data, it was also great for watching TV. I think Shang Guandandan would watch it. When it arrives, you will want to take it for yourself again. The Sunan show played a schematic diagram of Rasputin's various stages of evolution. We found that Rasputin's earliest form was a bear, which can be supported by the record of a virus containing GRN78 in his RNA. This virus only existed in Siberian brown bears in ancient times. I have a specialist. The team that studied the biological remains in the permafrost confirmed this. Except for the Siberian brown bears at a specific period, this virus does not exist in any other species, Sunangzio explained, pointing to the first stage of Rasputin. In ancient times, which era was it approximately? Lu Chang'an asked with concern. Usually the ancient period refers to before the 21st century BC, from 3 million to 4,000 years ago, which is a long span. Sunangzio was a little confused. Isn't this common sense? Oh, I thought the ancient period was 2 billion years ago. I thought there were no creatures like Siberian brown bears at that time. Lu Chang'an nodded to express his understanding. For a long period of time thereafter, this bear lived in North Asia and around the Arctic Circle. The GGTC in its oligonucleotide mutated into TAC, which shows that it successfully succeeded in a Siberian brown bear transformed into a polar bear. Does the limitation of its range of activities also indicate that its individual abilities are not particularly outstanding? Although it has the ability to transform biological characteristics in the face of the external environment, if it encounters certain extinct natural disasters, such as a super earthquake, it will world-class volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, etc., and it does not have enough self-protection capabilities. So it is accustomed to living in a limited, familiar geographical environment. Lu Chang'an's memory is the same as that of ordinary humans. Even if some things become blurry because they are too far away and it is difficult to sort out the details, there are always some pictures that are particularly clear. The violent plate movement, the uplifted mountains, the torn ocean trenches, the volcanic eruptions that symbolized the power of the earth, once wiped out 99% of the life on the earth. This kind of witnessing that the world finally prospered and became the feeling of doomsday silence was the most desperate loneliness Lu Chang'an had ever experienced. After that, the species system and ecosystem were completely different, like the birth of a new world. In the kind of disaster you mentioned, no creature has the ability to protect itself. However, its behavior pattern does show that at this moment, it only has a long lifespan and a strong body, but in the end it is just following its instincts. It is an animal that does not have a strong heart to match it. After that, it still survived as the top predator of the Earth's ecological chain, until it became a human and began to survive among humans until modern times. Sunangzio looked at Lu Chang'an. He hesitated to speak. What do you want to say? Lu Chang'an turned around and noticed Sunangzio's hesitation. We have no way to restore the process of it changing from a bear to a human, and, after it becomes a human, it may have the ability to reproduce, which is different from you. Sunangzio couldn't help but touch her belly, her eyes a little resentful. I mean, it can have offspring with ordinary human women, but you can only have offspring with women who have mutated. At this point, it can be proved that you are further ahead in the evolutionary sequence than it is. After all, the higher the it is a higher organism, the rarer the offspring are and the harsher the conditions are. Awesome. Lu Chang'an was not very envious, but simply thought that a bear could turn into a human and counterattack from an ordinary creature to become a king. It was very inspiring. I recommend a book called Creating Super Fantasy. This book should be highly recommended. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 617. Judging from Sunangzio's description, this is a science fiction story that takes place in the real world, from a bear to a human. Now everyone can think of him as a human named Rasputin, or it is unknown whether he will be named Xianmi or something like that after he reappears. The most important thing is that he can reproduce with human women, and the human women as mates do not need to be special. Then this is a complete recompilation of the DNA sequence. What happened to this bear? Such an adventure can be said to be a unique miracle in the history of biological evolution. Such a bear can be the protagonist of the story. But really speaking, the birth of life on Earth is itself the most incredible miracle in the universe. In this universe that spans hundreds of millions of light years, we have found such an asteroid and given birth to life. Even if it is such an asteroid that seems suitable for life to settle, there will be earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and meteorites falling from the sky. This is a devastating disaster for fragile lives. It was in such an environment that life on Earth was not only born, but also continues. They have even begun to imagine leaving this asteroid and looking for other planets suitable for settlement. One day, will their journey really be a sea of stars? Lu Chang'an is full of expectations for this. In comparison, the growth history of such a bear is just a bit strange. The world is so big, but I have never met him before, Lu Chang'an said with emotion. You also said that the world is so big. Theoretically, if you drop a bottle on the beach, it will return to its original point one day, but that's just a theory. Sunangzio approached Lu Chang'an, her eyes shaking. Finally staying in his eyes, the encounter between you and me is just one of thousands of possibilities. From the birth of human beings, each of my ancestors must protect themselves before giving birth to offspring. Facing the threat of savage beasts, the face of many crises in human race wars, the possibility of surviving one accident after another, they pass on from generation to generation. As long as one of them does not avoid the crisis, there will be no birth of me. There was no meeting of ours. You are right. Every life is a miracle of inheritance, so everyone should cherish this inheritance. Your ancestors did not know how much hard work they paid to allow the bloodline to be passed down to this day, but some people just choose to. We must abandon this inheritance, Lu Chang'an said regretfully. Your ability to change the topic is still as blunt as ever. Sunangzio looked at him angrily, then her eyes rolled and a faint blush appeared on her cheeks. So, by giving Li Hongfang a claw, Rasputin is sending a signal. Lu Chang'an continued to change the subject abruptly. It should be, there is no doubt that Rasputin has been looking for a super life form similar to him, but you have never met him, and naturally he has not met you, but he has found a super life form that is also similar to him. There are relics or evidence, and his presence in your treasure trove fully illustrates this point. Sunangzio didn't mind him changing the subject. There was plenty of time for romance, and the most important thing now was to find Rasputin. So when he met Li Hongfang at my treasure trove, he knew that Li Hongfang must be connected with me. As long as he hurt Li Hongfang would definitely contact me. He used Li Hongfang to discover my traces. Lu Chang'an nodded. That's it. Maybe when you were in contact with Li Hongfang recently, you were exposed to his sense of smell, Sunangzio said with a hint of reminder, because Lu Chang'an's attitude was still as casual as ever. Then the reason why he hasn't shown up yet is just because he is secretly observing me now. He doesn't know my attitude towards other super beings, nor can he know my strength, so he doesn't dare to show up rashly. It's really a vigilant little bear. Lu Chang'an understood. Just as Lu Chang'an humbly believed that he was the fifth in the world, this little bear did not think that he was the most powerful creature on Earth. That's possible, but there could also be other reasons. What other reason? I don't know. I'm just reminding you that you have always been in contact with normal humans, and your thinking will inevitably be affected. Even when facing a super being like Rasputin, you are used to facing it with normal human thinking. It's not appropriate. You should be more careful and vigilant about the other person. Maybe it's not suitable to analyze him using human behavior patterns. Sunangzio felt that his attitude was still too plain and not cautious enough. Thank you. Lu Chang'an agreed with Sunangzio's words. From Sunangzio's perspective, Lu Chang'an was just a super life form. There was no intuitive comparison. Between the two super life forms, no one could say which one was more powerful. You're welcome. By the way, Li Hongfang said that when you agreed to help her heal her injuries, you put forward a condition. What are you going to do to her? Sunangzio didn't want to ask more questions at first, but she still cared about it after all. Oh, we are planning to open a new restaurant and need a store manager. Lu Chang'an did not forget this. Lu Chang'an just felt that Li Hongfang looked like the manager of a rice noodle shop. Besides, it can be regarded as finding a good job for her, which has a better future than digging graves and digging soil. As expected of you, Sunangzia was speechless. He actually found a big thief in the underground archaeology world to be the manager of the rice noodle shop. Fortunately, he could think of it. If the customers who came to his restaurant knew that the hands of the rice noodle shop manager had gone through countless old graves, would they still be able to eat the food in her shop? I hope we can share information on tracking Rasputin. You provide the information, and if there is a conflict in the end, I will be responsible for dealing with him. Lu Chang'an has not seen the S-class transformers under Sunangzia, but if those transformers people can deal with Rasputin, and Sunangzia will not study Rasputin so carefully and actively now. Are you responsible for me? I'm responsible for dealing with him, Lu Chang'an corrected with a smile. Would you rather be responsible for him than me? Sunangzia looked at Lu Chang'an lazily, as if there was nothing wrong with his ears, and stretched out his fingers to pinch his soft earlobes. Lu Chang'an took a long breath. Let's have a sparring session. Sunangzia took off his outer work clothes and showed an eager expression. Since we are going to cooperate to deal with Rasputin, there is no doubt about my information search and monitoring capabilities, but I want to know if you can really to deal with him. We sparred. That was many years ago. At that time, I was just an ignorant girl who fell into the trap of a tiger. Sunangzia looked at Lu Chang'an's tall and straight body. It's a pity that I didn't leave even a scar on you back then. Oh, are you much better now than you were then? Lu Chang'an has never thought about this question. In his eyes, whether it is Sunangzia now or Su Mei who wanted to assassinate him back then, they don't have much physical ability. The difference? There is still a slight difference. She has a slightly better figure, but she does not completely and honestly restore the 14-year-old girl Su Mei. To be fair, I know how to use weapons, but you can only use your bare hands. Sunangzia walked out of the room. The training ground is downstairs. Then why don't you prepare some RPG shots? That would be more fair. Sunangzia chuckled, just like the playful girl back then. The recommended novel Dungeon Players is written by Lan Batian. The work is very creative. It is a joyful daily novel between a dungeon master and players. It has 1 million words. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 619. The advanced air circulation equipment and the overhead screen that simulates sunlight projection and blue sky have made it difficult for ordinary people to distinguish with the naked eye. No matter how long you stay, it will be difficult for people to realize that this is an underground base. Walking through the long corridor, you can even see a pool of water lilies bathing in the gentle sunshine. Your vision suddenly opens up, and you see that Sunangzia has reached a valley. Surrounding the valley and in the far distance are towering snow-capped mountains, and the mighty river flows through it. On the top of the cliff where the waves are lapping, at the feet of Sunangzia and Lu Chang'an, is a flat martial arts training ground. The river wind blows in your face, making your clothes flutter. Is this a holographic image? Lu Chang'an clapped his hands in amazement. Of course he would not think that Sunangzia could create a paradise underground surrounded by thousands of meters of snow-capped mountains. That was no longer the power of technology, but a magical method. Yes, actually the whole place is a little bigger than the training ground where we are standing. It uses airflow and sound to increase the sense of presence. It is not much different from the real environment. Sunangzia turned to look at Lu Chang'an. You need to change clothes? I promise there are no hidden cameras or anything in the locker room. As Sunangzia bit her lip, it was really strange. For Sunangzia, there is actually no difference between male humans and other male creatures. The human body is nothing more than a combination of various cells. The human males she used for experiments, and there are countless human male corpses that have been sectioned and made into specimens, but why do you always think of Lu Chang'an in front of you when you think of the torso under his clothes, and your face turns slightly red and your heart beats? I can actually remember things that happened more than 100 years ago so clearly. I am obviously a professional biologist. For me, I also try to explain the relationship and the nature of emotions between men and women from my own professional perspective. Is it just some biological instincts and glandular secretions that work together to cause the brain to react? Why is it that when you really face the man you like, your brain cannot be controlled rationally and you are always very emotional? Human beings are so interesting. Sunangzio's eyes twinkled like stars in the sky. No need. Lu Chang'an has no intention of breaking out of his clothes today, nor does he have any intention of using Sunangzio's striking power to adjust his body. He just wants to make Sunangzio understand that he is actually the source of her supernatural performance ability. Things like Shen Yulan are common, but they only appear in other people's stories. At the same time, he also wanted to know about Sunangzio's abilities, not because he was wary of her and wanted to find out, but he was just a little curious. Lu Chang'an had no way of knowing how Sunangzio had transplanted the abilities from Mrs. Karnstein. Apart from her own curiosity, the method by which Sunangzio obtained the ability is not actually important. What is important is that she obtained this ability. Is it improved or compromised? Sunangzio is not the kind of person who is complacent and easily satisfied. Since Mrs. Karnstein can be tricked by her, Sunangzio will naturally be on guard, and maybe she will find ways to eliminate the threat that may be taken away by others. In such a process of experimenting and transforming herself, Sunangzio's abilities are improved, and it is possible to surpass Mrs. Karnstein. What's more, considering Sunangzio's robots and the top-level technological and industrial capabilities she currently possesses, it would not be surprising for her to appear in front of him wearing a low-end version of Iron Man equipment. Then you wait for me for a while, it may take a little longer. Do you want me to call Huangrong over to accompany you? Sunangzio said to Lu Chang'an with some hope. No need. Lu Chang'an did not forget who Huangrong was. It was not a subordinate of Sunangzio, but a robot she made, one of those harem robots. Sunangzio also introduced Huangrong as an example characteristics of these robots. At this point, Lu Chang'an admired her for her broad imagination. Many people like to say that rich people really know how to play. In fact, not every rich person can play, but the super rich who have the top technological and industrial production capabilities, will make people think they really know how to play. Feel. How about I go see Li Hongfang, and I can let the gold coins guide me? Lu Chang'an thought for a while and said, he brought Li Hongfang over and left it alone. It was a bit too casual. After all, the other party was also his reserve store manager. No, do you know if I need a health certificate? Then, I'll hurry up. It won't take long actually. Just wait for me here for a while. When Sunangzio heard that Lu Chang'an was going to see Li Hongfang, Sunangzio thought that she didn't need him to wait too long. She would wait for her later. It's quite troublesome to call him over when you're ready. After saying that, Sunangzio didn't wait for Lu Chang'an to say anything more, and left in a hurry. Sunangzio recently discovered that although Li Hongfang is not very beautiful, he has a good figure, not to mention that the profession of tomb robbers may also be affected by men. Within the scope of professional temptation, there is the temptation of uniforms, and of course there is the temptation of profession. Many men have some fantasies about women in specific professions. The industry of tomb robbers combines danger, night, darkness, mystery, and other elements. Do women who work in this industry also look particularly sexy in their eyes? Guests and hosts did as they pleased, and Lu Chang'an did not insist on going to see Li Hongfang. He just stood there and looked at the holographic projection in front of him. A snow-capped giant ape is climbing on a nearby snow-capped mountain, and birds are frightened from time to time in the dense forest on the river bank. In the foothills of the farthest mountain, a turtle is carrying a majestic and incidental mountain on its back. The palace with its exquisite gardens is slowly climbing up the mountain, and the clouds and mists surround the palace, making it look like the residence of an immortal emperor. Lu Chang'an was paying attention to the palace when a crane sounded like it suddenly descended from the sky. A black and white crane flew out of the palace garden through the clouds and mist. He saw it arrive in front of Lu Chang'an in an instant, but it transformed into a fairy dressed in neon clothes danced gracefully on the martial arts training ground. Her brows and eyes were full of charm and graceful grace. She glanced at him from time to time. She was indescribably charming and alluring. A wisp of gauze slipped from her shoulders, her body began to rotate, the ribbons flowed, and the neon clothes suddenly turned into pieces of peach blossoms scattered around her. Lu Chang'an suddenly thought of Bai Fen. Why did he think of Bai Fen? Lu Chang'an turned around and watched the holographic projection audio and video for a while. Su Mei had already put on her equipment and walked over. It seems that her equipment is not like Stark's in the middle period, which can be put on or taken off while walking. I heard that when a man sees a woman he is familiar with suddenly showing a completely different dressing style, he often has some ready emotions. Su Nangxiu showed a slightly shy expression, but her tone and eyes were a little expectant. Su Nangxiu still had some experience in this regard. At that time, Shanghai was a prosperous city, and goods from all over the world were transported from all over the world. Among them, there were also many Western exotic and skillful things, as well as various costumes with different styles. He was willing to choose for her, but it was only under his strong request that she reluctantly put it on, and fulfilled his wishes again and again. Lu Chang'an looked at her. Su Nangxiu was wearing a close-fitting leather jacket, which was a bit like the equipment Qinyan gave him that day when he went to investigate the Lushan Valley. No, he looked carefully. Under the light, this slightly shiny material was not instead of leather, it is composed of extremely fine scales. There is a very complex hinge structure between the scales. As her body moves, these scales change their angles and positions as if flowing, but they still stick to her body. No hindrance was caused at all. Lu Chang'an could tell that this kind of scales should have high energy absorption efficiency. It would be difficult for ordinary thermal weapons to cause damage to her. Coupled with her own physical fitness, she would already be able to play a superhero of average strength in this world. No problem, of course, the overall feeling is that she is more suitable to play some villain scientists. It's not derogatory, but a compliment, a genius scientist villain who looks like a beautiful girl, isn't that cool? These scales covering the whole body can be separated at any time like a zipper. Su Nangxiu briefly introduced the characteristics of the armor. Awesome. Lu Chang'an nodded in praise. This helmet has extremely strong protective capabilities. Wearing it gives me an experience similar to an Iron Man helmet. It can help me obtain combat data, analyze the enemy's next attack intention, etc. Su Nangxiu held a small helmet in his hand, and in her other hand were two long knives. The two long knives are thin and long, all dark in color, with many fine lines on them. These lines look very much like the sword of King Gujian of Yu. It seems that this is a battle between flesh and blood facing a combination of super life and technological power. Lu Chang'an was looking forward to it. I think Su Nangxiu will not be as easy to be rubbed as those black and white twin sisters. Die. By the way, has Pu Shaogang come to see you? It seemed that he had a connection with Lu Chang'an, and Su Nangxiu also thought of the people who had fought against Lu Chang'an. Pu Shaogang is relatively weak. He is very old, and his physical fitness and certain cell indicators are not suitable for complex transformation. Su Nangxiu only provided some potential stimulating drugs to Pu Shaogang. Naturally, he was not able to carry out complex genetic transformation. Evolutionary transformation of the Qi and Peel brothers must be. It seems not. Lu Chang'an was not impressed by this person. After all, the last time he had contact with him was when Lu Chang'an demolished his martial arts gym. There has been no news about him for a long time, it feels like he has disappeared from the world. I asked people to look for him, but there is no trace of him at all. I don't know where he is hidden. Su Nangxiu didn't care about this person, but just mentioned it casually. Let's get started. I have to go back early to cook. Lu Chang'an looked at the time and said. Pu Xiaogang stole something from me. Sunangzio continued, but didn't take it to heart. Can you still make black bone chicken and ginseng soup now? Just as many people remember, the taste of their hometown when they were young, the dishes cooked by their mother, and the banquet served with freshly killed pigs, chickens, ducks, and geese in the countryside are all extremely delicious, or unforgettable tastes that can never be found again. For Sunanjiu, speaking of which, that bowl of black bone chicken and ginseng soup always feels like the best memory on the tip of the tongue. As I told you last time, the food I cook is not the same as it used to be, Lu Chang'an said with a smile. When it comes to delicious soups, black bone chicken and ginseng soup is not at the forefront, not even as good as matsu take and ostrich palm soup. It is not as good as the mullet egg soup that Qinyanan can make. If Sunangzia wants to drink soup, it is actually more appropriate to ask Qinyanan for help. After all, Lu Chang'an only has one pair of hands and skills, but a clever woman cannot cook without rice, and Qinyanan has a richer reserve of ingredients. As for what she values is the person who makes the soup, and the affection behind the soup, Lu Chang'an is naturally powerless. Okay, I'm not the little girl I was back then, so be careful, Sunangzio snorted. His attitude never changed at all. It is said that men are easily disconnected and forget old feelings, but he is as hard-hearted as iron. Sunangzio also knew that her desire to get back together with him did not depend on An Nuan at all, but on his will not to be influenced by others. In an ordinary family, when there is someone outside the man, the first wife will often get angry at the vixen, thinking that the vixen has seduced the man. As long as the vixen is dealt with, the man will still come back, but now my situation is still a little different. Yes, it wasn't that he was so distracted by An Nuan, but that he no longer had the same affection for her that he had in the past. Sunangzio stepped back step by step, walked to the training ground, and put on his helmet. Lu Chang'an saw the thin scales on her armor moving in layers, like swimming snakes. The beauty's body exuded a dangerous beauty. She held two swords in both hands. She didn't put on any posture, just stood there normally. Looked at Lu Chang'an. The front of her helmet was a fully transparent viewing window, and Lu Chang'an could see the slightly raised corners of her mouth and wild eyebrows. She looked very confident. Lu Chang'an estimated that most of her estimates of his ability data came from the video of him playing in the gym. Through his action data in the video, a lot of information can naturally be obtained. She would probably make a certain estimate and judge that he had retained his strength at that time, but even if she overestimated his strength based on this, she would still have the confidence to compete with him. Lu Chang'an rushed over and punched her in the middle of the chest. Sunangzio actually reacted and retreated, but her fist was like a precision-guided missile, carrying strong airflow and impacting it, as if the impact of his movement was at the place where she retreated. Yes, Sunangzio looked at his cheek so close, with a slight smile on the corner of her mouth. She raised her wrist and swept the long knife across. The light of the knife was like the flying long hair of a beautiful woman looking back, but it carried a cruel will towards flesh and blood. It was so sharp that it could cut the skin of a person without even touching it, and a drop of blood would flow out. Lu Chang'an withdrew his fist and did not try to let her chop his forearm. After all, he was wearing long sleeves. Sunangzio forced back Lu Chang'an's fist with a knife, and the unbridled pride in her eyebrows grew even higher. She thought that she had stabbed Lu Chang'an with a similar knife back then, but she was surprised to find that he was like a monster without leaving a drop of blood, but today he avoided her edge. Is this a happy thing? She would rather he still refused to dodge, then pushed her down and made her pay the price without any explanation. The slight tremble after her skin was touched by a man for the first time still seemed to be rippling in her heart. Sunangzia gritted her teeth, raised her two knives and slashed down hard, one left and one right, and the landing point was his shoulder that other women leaned on. With your strength and speed, if Spider-Man didn't have spider silk and spider suit, he would probably be chopped into pieces by you. It was Lu Chang'an's turn to retreat. In fact, he didn't know what kind of strength Spider-Man was, but he felt that Sunangzio's strength was a bit beyond his expectation. It was not at the same level as Black and White twin sisters. Even the S-class transformed people she developed were still far behind. Pork belly slices. I'm not interested in him, but I'd like to try your taste, Sunangzio snorted. This man still didn't take her seriously, otherwise how could he have such leisurely teasing? Sunangzio continued to rush over without hesitation. How could there be so many fancy so-called tricks in a real battle? Even if it is a super life form, it is ultimately a duel between flesh and body, so strength, speed, and reaction ability will determine the final result of the duel. A blue electric arc flashed across the scales on the armor, and Sunangzio's speed suddenly increased, pulling out an afterimage visible to the naked eye, and instantly invaded Lu Chang'an's arms, and the two knives in his hands suddenly plunged into his chest. Lu Chang'an raised his hands, held her arms tightly just a millimeter or two before the blade touched her clothes, and then kicked her out. Sunangzio's body flew out like a tassel shoe that accidentally came off when she kicked a can. Sunangzio landed on the ground, and the scales on the battle armor rubbed against the ground, creating streaks of fire. The holographic projection system that could sense the movement of objects within the range immediately projected a trace of impact on the virtual martial arts field, like a meteorite hitting it diagonally. Sunangzio was surprised when he looked at the traces on the ground, because this holographic projection system is based on the power of feedback from the ground. That is to say, if it were in a real outdoor scene, his kick would be it will also have the same effect on her. Are you okay? Since he is willing to discuss, Lu Chang'an will certainly give his opponent a certain degree of respect. If it is just an attack equivalent to touching the opponent, what is the difference between teasing Sunangzio? I'm fine, but your child was kicked in the humming belly by you. Sunangzio lay on the ground with a pale face and did not get up. She raised her lower body, pressed her abdomen with her palms, and still held her other hand. A long knife. Lu Chang'an looked shocked. A normal man would have this normal reaction when hearing such news, and ran over quickly. The moment he squatted down, the armor on Sunangzio's body suddenly exploded, covering Lu Chang'an completely within the explosion range. Those thin scales struck Lu Chang'an like rapid rain. In just a short moment, the armor originally worn by Sunangzio was replaced by Lu Chang'an's. Sunangzio was only wearing a simple one-piece underwear. She hadn't stood in front of him so exposed for a long time. Sunangzio still raised her hand to cover it up out of habit, and then showed a sly smile. Did you fall into the trap? This is called taking advantage of the situation. Lu Chang'an also laughed. His body surface area was already larger than that of Sunangzio, but the armor composed of scales that originally fit Sunangzio's body perfectly fit him perfectly. The scales must be some kind of high-end material that incorporates biological characteristics. Lu Chang'an can feel that these scales have a certain degree of life. Taking advantage of one's tactics is sometimes called self-righteousness. Sunangzio glared at Lu Chang'an and issued an instruction: dance for me the 8th set of national radio gymnastics for primary and secondary school students. Lu Chang'an felt tiny electric currents coming from the armor, stimulating his skin and muscles, so he started to dance the 8th set of national broadcast gymnastics for primary and secondary school students. Ha ha ha. Sunangzio laughed happily and snapped her fingers. Soundtrack. The familiar soundtrack of the 8th set of national radio gymnastics for primary and secondary school students rang out. In the melodious sound of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In the preparation section, Lu Chang'an began to stand still and prepare for exercise. Stretch, get ready, get up. Listening to the familiar male voice, Lu Chang'an acted very standard. Sunangzio continued to laugh. She loved this man deeply, but he was merciless to her. Of course she would be very happy if he could play such a prank on him. This armor uses the most advanced biomaterial technology of the Tesla Research Institute. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is technology from the future. It is not an advanced technology product independently completed by Sunangziu. It involves the most advanced technology of the entire Tesla Research Institute. Important secrets. He has probably forgotten the girl who asked him to go watch the nuclear explosion together. If I didn't say explosion, I would take it for granted. If I didn't say 10,000, I would take it as a matter of course, only 2 or 3,000, I may not be able to do it, but at least I can urge myself to work hard. This explanation may not be satisfactory to people, but you can still see more content. Feel free to scold me if you scold me. This chapter is 5,700 words long. I recommend a fantasy work White Dragon, Lord of Winter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Rusiahua. Chapter 620. While Lu Chang'an was experiencing the physical reaction of the suit of armor using bioelectricity to control muscles and nerves, he looked at Sun Nangxiu, who showed a happy expression. I suddenly discovered that it is not suitable for men to wear this armor naked. Sun Nangxiu walked around Lu Chang'an and came to a conclusion. In such a winter day, Lu Chang'an only wore a thin shirt and a thin autumn jacket. It was very convenient for the scale structure of the armor to effectively stimulate his skin. Otherwise, he would be like ordinary people wearing sweaters and woolen pants. Coming up, it will still hinder the action of the armor and the control of his muscles. It seems that the design concept of the suit of armor has been initially verified. Facing a super vitality with strong physical ability like Lu Chang'an, it is difficult to defeat the force blindly with force, so this method of outsmarting him is still needed. For example, the lightning falling from the sky may be powerless to him, but he cannot resist the traces of bioelectricity acting on the nerve cells, because stimulation that directly acts on the cell level cannot be resisted by will. A very simple example: normal, healthy men cannot control their body's reactions at certain times. It is based on this inspiration that the design plan for the armor's ability to bind enemies was formed. In fact, everyone knows that people's autonomous consciousness is not able to control the body very often. Therefore, the transformation of the human body in many film and television works often involves destroying some brain tissue so that the human body will not do things without conscious control. Instinct reaction. Then should I be glad that I came to see you because I wore clothes today, Lu Chang'an said happily, and at the same time refuted Sun Nangxiu's point of view. You are discriminating against men, I object, I protest. Why do you women think that designs that wrap around one's body curves and reveal them are acceptable, beautiful, or should be accepted by the public, but it is not suitable for us men if all parts of their bodies are wrapped? This is a manifestation of straight women's cancer. It's really too much. That's too much. What are you women thinking in your heads? I'm surprised that you are still in the mood to ridicule the remarks made by feminists here. Sun Nangxiu was not interested in picking on him. A truly outstanding woman like her did not bother to respond to those feminist fighters, and did not even consider herself as a female. It has nothing to do with them, and it doesn't require them to stand up and speak out for her womanhood. If you have the same experience as me, you will be in a good mood like me at all times. After listening to the music of the 8th set of radio gymnastics, Lu Chang'an felt that the warm-up state was not enough, so he continued to do it. I didn't let you continue. Just after saying this, Sun Nangxiu reacted and had no time to pick up the long knife on the ground. She retreated sharply. She was wearing one-piece underwear and looked like a star that had been hit by a locomotive. Lu Chang'an laughed and continued to complete the second set of 8th broadcast gymnastics in place. After the armor executes a command and launches bioelectricity to control Lu Chang'an's body to complete a set of actions, it should be on standby to keep Lu Chang'an in a quiet state. But he didn't. he was still jumping around and moving his hands and feet without being affected by the armor at all. It seems that he was not affected by the armor at all in the beginning, but he felt the true effect of the armor, so he pretended to cooperate with the performance. Sunangzio was furious and glared at Lu Chang'an as she finished the 8th set of radio gymnastics for the second time. Just as she was about to try to activate the armor again, Lu Chang'an had already rushed over, raised his fist and hit her chest without any explanation. "Can't you attack somewhere else?" Sunangzio dodged away angrily. "He did it then and he did it now, but they are two completely different things. This damn man is so cruel and cruel." "Good." Lu Chang'an agreed. As soon as his voice fell, his body turned behind Sunangzio and locked Sunangzio's body tightly, preventing her from moving. Sunangzio struggled for a while and then gave up. It seemed that there was no difference from before. She was still helpless against him. The difference from then was that she had no murderous intention towards him now, so there was no need to really use her trump card to fight to the death. She at least knew that the suit of armor was designed to restrain the body 100 times better than an S-class cyborg, but its bioelectrical nerve control system was completely ineffective against Lu Chang'an. "Let it come back to you," Lu Chang'an whispered in her ear. Sunangzio nodded, and Lu Chang'an's armor that looked like snake scales left his body like flowing black liquid, quickly covering Sunangzio's delicate body. Lu Chang'an pushed Sunangzio away and looked at her with interest. Sunangzio knew that his interest was in her armor, so she turned her face and snorted coldly. Her mood was not good. "Your temper is still the same as before. You are too competitive. You want to be a winner in everything. Even in front of me, you have to have the upper hand." Lu Chang'an smiled nonchalantly. "There is no time in this world. Are they all winners? If a person doesn't have this kind of intention, what's the difference between him and a salted fish?" Sunangzio also didn't care. She was also a determined person, and it was difficult for her to be persuaded by others, or to be shaken by her persistence. Sometimes such people are cute, sometimes such people are terrible. Many of the things you have far exceed the performance of the current scientific level. Lu Chang'an looked at Sunangzio's armor, showing a trace of incomprehensible confusion, just like the true face of the physical world at the beginning of this century. A corner of it was revealed, which caused a sense of shock to the old master who was still reciting 8 essays. The old master may not be able to understand it, so it would not cause a feeling of subversion of the world view. This metaphor may not be very accurate. It is probably a figure from the first half of this century. People, how they feel now, with all the weird technologies, not even science fiction novels can design so many details to express the sense of the future. Early this century. Oh, early last century. Sorry, my impression of time is always lagging behind or inaccurate. Lu Chang'an looked at Sunangzio. His wrong impression of time was not the point. Is there any problem? Sunangzio didn't want to explain, or it was not the time to explain. In every truly great era, there will be great people who are ahead of all mankind. Why can't it be me? It can be you. Do you mean that another truly great era is coming? Lu Chang'an asked with some expectation. He was not a prophet, and he could not figure out the trajectory of human development. He sometimes also you will wonder why one moment it seemed like a country and race composed of just beasts wearing clothes, and the next moment the sprouts of science and technology suddenly burst out, and then towering trees of technological civilization were planted. Maybe it's an era of spiritual energy recovery. Sunangzio's lips curled up slightly. When I'm not close to Shangguandandan, I occasionally find her a little cute. Lu Chang'an knew that she was referring to a wild boar that rushed out that day. Shangguandandan pointed at the wild boar and said, "Such a big wild boar must have revived spiritual energy." Seeing that Sunangzio didn't want to say anything, Lu Chang'an stopped asking any more questions. After all, they were just acquaintances and not anyone to talk to, so he nodded to indicate that the topic was over. "You seem a little afraid of Shangguandandan." Lu Chang'an was somewhat concerned about this, because except for Sunangziu, in the eyes of others, Shang Guandandan seemed harmless to humans and animals. It can't be said that she is harmless to humans and animals. She always tries to trick Lu Chang'an into using some of his household appliances, which annoys Lu Chang'an. A little scared? Haha, I hope to seal her in that coffin, then sink her into a large trench or eye of the South China Sea, and let something like Oawa suppress her. Sunangziu really regretted that. The information was not accurate enough. If he had known that there was a little girl like Shang Guandandan inside who was hostile and scary to him, he should have disposed of the coffin at all costs. Lu Chang'an nodded. From now on, if Shang Guandandan calls Sunangziu an evil woman, Lu Chang'an will definitely touch Shang Guandandan's thermos to express his concern. Eternal people are afraid of death. When they feel that their lives can continue for a long time, something suddenly jumps out and threatens them. This is a stronger psychological fear than ordinary people when they feel that their lives are threatened. More, you should also know this feeling, right? Sunangziu recalled that when Shang Guandandan locked the vitality and blood in Sunangziu's body, it made Sunangziu feel for the first time in the past century that she might be like a little hen whose throat was cut and bled. Die. I don't know. Lu Chang'an shook his head. When the sun explodes, maybe I will die, but before that, there should be no problem for humans to grow into a second-level civilization on the Kardashev scale, but, maybe, human beings are a self-destructive race after all, and maybe the Earth civilization system will be restarted again soon. Sunangziu knew that Lu Chang'an was rambling again, so she stopped answering his words. Instead of paying attention to the technological power I have, you might as well pay attention to Shang Guandandan's coffin. I feel like taking things. It's a truly amazing technological product. Technology product? Isn't it a fairy treasure? Isn't Xiangxia's treasure just the modern human imagination of future technology? That makes sense. You go back to cooking. If you get more detailed information about the coffin, you can discuss it with me. Maybe we can inspire each other. That makes sense. So Lu Chang'an left Sunangziu's base and went home to cook, 3 meals a day. Thanks to Master Nabefo for the recommendation. I highly recommend the masterpiece. I'm really not interested in money. I'm really immortal. Author, Chu Lian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 621. After the 3-day holiday, Qin Yanan said that the roasted camel was ready and ready to eat. Making roasted camels is certainly not something that ordinary people can handle in their home kitchens. It is Zhu Huntang's team of chefs who are actually responsible for purchasing and transporting the ingredients, as well as making them. The banquet designer assigned by Zhongqing is responsible for decorating the restaurant and dining table. The place to eat camels is at restaurant number 1 in Zhuhuntang. There is a huge dining table that can be used to place this camel. This was a real feast. After Lu Chang'an received the information, he was ready to ask Shang Guandandan and Zhou Dongdong to set off together, and then go to the rice noodle shop to call Zhou Shuling. Shang Guandandan was wearing a grey jumpsuit today, in the style of a furry bear, with a hood with a round bear head. She did not put the hood on her head, but she put a pack of foam in the hood. 10 piece, an Oreo cookie, and 3 jellies. Zhou Dongdong wears the same style, but she always wears a hood and claims that she has turned into a scary panda. These 2 sets of clothes were bought by Zhou Shuling. She wanted to wear parent-child clothes with Zhou Dongdong, but she was worried about being laughed at by Lu Chang'an, so she bought a slightly smaller set for Shang Guandandan to wear. Zhou Shuling herself was not wearing any clothes, but she was quite happy to see them. The 2 of them, one large and one small, seemed like lovely older and younger sisters. Ouch! Zhou Dongdong scratched his neck and roared toward the sky. Aren't you a scary panda? Lu Chang'an asked. Yes, Zhou Dongdong shouted, then she opened her arms and hugged the sycamore tree and climbed up to show that she could climb the tree like a real panda, although she could only lift her legs to rub the bark. How come a panda barks like a husky? I am a panda that can only squeal. Zhou Dongdong thought hard and found a reason to deal with Brother Chang'an, who always paid attention to these unimportant issues. Pandas have more than a dozen kinds of sounds, including bleating, squeaking, whining, snapping and even barking, but they don't know howling. Lu Chang'an still understands animals very well. What does that have to do with me? I'm a panda that can only squeal. No matter how other pandas cry, I will squeal, squeak, squeak. Zhou Dongdong shouted insistently. You call slowly, I'm leaving. Seeing that he could not communicate with Zhou Dongdong, Lu Chang'an turned around and left. Zhou Dongdong quickly stopped barking, ran over and pulled Lu Chang'an's finger to follow him. Shang Guandandan had already boiled the water and followed behind with a thermos full of effervescent water. Dong dong, pandas crawl on the ground with 4 legs, Shang Guandandan reminded Zhou Dongdong. Lu Chang'an took advantage of the situation and lifted Zhou Dongdong up, and then knocked Shang Guandandan on the head. Shang Guandandan touched his head and put on his hood. A few jelly rolls rolled out. He quickly picked them up and put them in the small pocket on his waist. As for the Oreos and effervescent tablets, they didn't seem to fall off. She ignored it and continued to put it in her hood. Lu Chang'an couldn't help but worry. Zhou Dongdong was already a stupid child, and there was always Shang Guandandan teasing Zhou Dongdong with ill intentions from time to time, which was really annoying. Dan, because Zhou Shuling treats you so well, please be a good Samaritan in the future, thank you, Lu Chang'an said to Shang Guandandan. I have a good relationship with Dongdong's mother. She promised to let me be Dongdong's godmother. If it were before, the palace would have to prepare for the canonization ceremony. I would make Dongdong the eldest princess. Shang Guandandan looked at it. Lu Chang'an said. Lu Chang'an also looked at Shang Guandandan. He suspected that Shang Guandandan was trying to take advantage of his seniority again, but he had no evidence, because the eldest princess meant the emperor's sister, and it only became a rule in the Eastern Han Dynasty. During the Western Han Dynasty, many rules were not fixed. For example, the eldest princess could be the emperor's sister, but sometimes she could also be the eldest daughter. For example, Emperor Wen of the Han Dynasty made his eldest daughter Lu Piao the eldest princess. Forget it, this naughty little old lady only thinks about these boring things all day long. Anyway, it makes people feel less worried than Sunangziu. Don't you suspect that I am taking advantage of your seniority? Shang Guandandan looked at Lu Chang'an suspiciously. Lu Chang'an nodded candidly. Giggle, you guessed it right. Shang Guandandan held the thermos bottle and let out a girl's clear and delicate laugh. Lu Chang'an frowned, this boring old lady. When I came to the restaurant, I found Zhou Shuling and found that All Stars and Mi Jioming had gathered at the rice noodle shop at this eating spot. Take your time, you two. Let's have dinner somewhere else first. Lu Chang'an looked at the 8 chicken drumsticks, 4 bowls of rice noodles and 10 meat buns in front of the All Stars and Michael Ming, and raised his hands to express his admiration. The 2 uncles have become a little cuter. Zhou Dongdong sees them often and is already familiar with them. He can talk to them now, because Brother Chang'an said that he should run away quickly when encountering bad guys and strangers, but this time the 2 uncles didn't even say that they were bad people, even Brother Chang'an. All Star and Michael laughed, a little embarrassed to be praised by the children, but after all, they were called cute, which was considered a kind of compliment full of goodwill. She means that you have become fatter. No, I mean, a little bit fatter. No, in short, it just feels like you have become a little rounder. Sigh. Zhou Shuling, finally in my poor vocabulary, I found a word mellow that sounded more euphemistic. Zhou Shuling still understands her daughter very well. In Zhou Dongdong's eyes, this is what cute means, but she still failed to put it tactfully. Zhou Shuling was a little annoyed. After all, she did not read enough books. It would be better if Lu Chang'an could do it. Well, besides being able to attack Zhou Shuling, he is also quite good at talking to others. Michael Ming and All-Star looked at each other, both stunned. Brother Me, I remember the first time I met you. You were tall and thin, and your face was pale. I was still thinking that you must have a beer belly in 2 years. Many fat people look like this before they gain weight, All-Star replied in a daze. God comes. Brother Quan, I was also thinking at the time that it was hard to explain that you were under a lot of pressure at work and you didn't look like you were exercising regularly. It was very rare that you were only slightly bald but didn't have a swollen belly. Mi Jioming also recalled it. The two of them looked at each other again, and both realized that over the past period of time, they had been competing for food intake, and both of them had gained weight without even realizing it. Farewell. Lu Chang'an left with the people. He didn't know whether they would continue to eat or whether they would turn around. He was very grateful for their restaurant consumption during this period. If they stopped overeating from now on, Lu Chang'an would not feel regretful. After all, they were making money. It is not as important as the physical health of consumers.